Hello, everyone. We are so glad that you were able to join us on this very important day. We know that we have the presidential election that's going on, in a couple of weeks, and we have the presidential debate tonight. So the information that you hear tonight about criminal justice reform and the judicial process will be very important for the and relevant to the discussion that you will hear during the Supreme Court nominee meet and greet. And again, we want to welcome you. My name is Kimberly Hill Knott, and I am the Director of Political Relations at Perfecting Church. And one of the things that we pride ourselves in doing is making sure that the body of Christ in particular and the general public are aware of various political issues that are going on. And, you've heard it said before, and it's certainly more true today than ever before, that this is indeed one of the most important elections of our time. And so I'm proud to introduce my pastor, Pastor Marvin L. Winans, who will bring remarks and welcome you also to this event.
Well, I want to welcome everyone that has joined us, and I want to thank Ms. Knott and her department for the job that they're doing. I tried to be apolitical, but I know that it is imperative that we make our voices heard and at least present you with the facts for you to make your own decisions. And so I want to thank all of you that have joined us. You can call someone and tell them that we're on. You can share and tell them to come on, as you will have opportunity to meet the candidates for the Michigan Supreme Court. I don't think that we can discount or let it go unnoticed that in our country, they are rushing to have another Supreme Court justice come in, and I don't feel one way about it, other than the fact that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That if you're going to have a policy, then you have to stick by that policy. That is the only thing that is going to rub me the wrong way, is when we are hypocritical in our procedures. But having said that, we have the opportunity to vote for candidates for the Michigan Supreme Court. And unlike state representatives or governors, our judicial Supreme Court does not term out. And so they can be on this court as long as we elect them. And so I just want you, as part of the Perfecting family, and those of you that are in Michigan, to take opportunity to hear what they have to say. So having said that, again, thank you, Sister Kim Hill Knott, and I give it back to you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Winans. And so I want to give you just a little bit of information that I think you will find helpful as you are making your decision about who to vote for and whether you will vote early or if you will vote in person. And certainly you have the right to do both. I was looking at the Pew Research Center, and they actually identified several issues that are really trending among voters, with economy being the number one issue. But interestingly, so when I say the economy, the number one issue, it's the number one issue among Democrats and Republicans. But then it changes in terms of political party affiliation. But what's also ranking very high, particularly among Democratic voters, is the coronavirus, climate change, crime, which ranks very high among Republican voters, and racial and ethnic inequality. And so the issues that we'll talk about today really have to do with all of these particular issues that have been identified by the Pew Research Center. Judges actually have the right to make very important decisions around the environment, around crime, and certainly racial and ethnic inequality. One of the other things that's important about this election is that throughout the country, you're seeing the drop boxes that are being put throughout the communities, and even some communities that actually action is being protested. But we are thankful that the state of Michigan has not really had any problems so far. And so we want to encourage everyone, as many people as possible, to vote early. And the reason that we want to do this is because we understand that there will be long lines on election day, and that's good, right? We want as many people to vote as possible, but we also know that there have been some serious challenges with our postal system. And so we want to encourage everybody to take advantage of the resources that the Michigan Secretary of State has really put in place. So let's look at some of the dates. And these dates were actually shared with Perfecting Church members. And so October 20th through November 3rd, you can register and vote in person at the clerk's office. And the interesting thing about registering to vote on the same day of the election is that this was a result of a proposal that was passed in 2018. And so Michigan residents, I should say, finally have the opportunity to register to vote on the same day that they're voting, or on election day. And so that was really a wonderful accomplishment that the voters were able to make on election day 2 years ago. And so we want to just make sure that we take advantage of that. All of our young people that you know who are not registered to vote, it is not too late to get them to vote. And so we want to make sure that as many people take their souls to the polls on election day and before as possible. Now, October 31st through November 1st, the clerk's office must open on Saturdays and Sundays for at least 8 hours for in-person voter registration and absentee voting. And of course, November 3rd is election day. And so again, there are different websites that you can visit. The one that I want to refer you to is Michigan.gov vote, which is a very good website with a lot of information about who your clerk and actually where you should go to vote. And there is also another one, ivoterguide.com, that you can visit. And this provides a lot of information about the candidates. And they've done an excellent job providing detailed information. So you can, when you click on the candidate's name, you will be able to see a series of questions that have been that they actually asked the candidates and what their response is. So I remember one issue is reparations. Should African Americans receive reparations? Another question that they ask about is abortion. And then there are other questions that I think that you would find, particularly the body of Christ would find very interesting. So make sure that you go and visit that website. It is so important to be an educated voter. And so many times, during presidential debates or debates in general, and Lord knows there have been so many commercials, and I'm sure you're being bombarded with calls and mail, but it's important to do your research on the candidates. And with the internet and all of the resources that are available, it's not hard to find the information, but it will take time. But I think our future depends on it. So again, this is a wonderful resource for you to take advantage of. One of the things that I also want to do while we're talking is I would like for you to like and share this event that we're having today. Tag as many people as possible. We really need for the body of Christ and the general public to understand the importance of the judicial process. I cannot tell you how many calls I've received, Facebook messages I've received about who to vote for and can I help them with the judges. Many of them, oftentimes people are just overwhelmed by the number of judicial candidates on the ballot. And so this is a wonderful opportunity for you to learn about the judicial process and how important it is to make sure that the right folks are being voted into office. And you'll hear from Attorney Richard Mack in a few moments, who will give more detailed information about the judicial process. And so with that, I would like to introduce Attorney Richard Mack. And many of you know Richard Mack was actually the former director of the Political Relations Department. Actually, me and Richard founded the department together over 20 years ago, Richard.
Wow, how about that?
Yeah, and actually, he has consistently won or received an award as the top, I think, labor attorney. I don't know if it's in the country, in the world, somewhere. But anyway, a very distinguished title. And so I'm happy to have him here today to talk to you about the judicial process. And also, he will talk about the Supreme Court process and how that works and why this particular race is so important, and particularly why it's so important at this time. There's been a lot of interest around judicial issues with what happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor in particular in the grand jury, and so many others, right? Say their names. There's so many that, it's hard to count. And you certainly can't count on one hand. And it's sad, but it's also a moment in time when we can really empower ourselves with knowledge to be able to choose the right people, and also to be able to actively engage judicial officers in discussions. I think more and more of them are becoming interested in talking to the general community about what they do and about issues that the general community is concerned about. So take advantage of that. That's part of your right as a resident, as a citizen, as a voter, to get involved in the political process. You cannot just stop at the polls. That is not enough. You going to the polls to vote is good. Thank you for doing that. You get a hand clap, but you can't stop there. And that is particularly the case for the body of Christ. We have to be actively engaged in the political process, and you cannot be engaged if you don't know what's going on. And so, again, we want to thank you for tuning in this evening. And again, want to just reiterate and ask you to please share this message and invite as many people as you can to hear the very important information that will take place and that will be discussed this evening. And without any further ado, I will introduce and turn you over to Attorney Richard Mack, who's also serving on the City of Detroit Charter Commission.
That's right. Thank you, Kimberly Hill. Kimberly just doing a wonderful job leading our department. It's so important for us in the city, us as Christians, people in general, to be involved in the political process. If you don't vote, if you don't engage, literally what you're doing is you're allowing someone else to decide for you who's going to lead you. You're allowing someone else to decide who's going to establish how much you pay in taxes, what your tax dollars go for. You're allowing someone else to decide who's going to be on the bench as judges. Not just the Supreme Court, but we have three levels of judges in the state of Michigan that we vote on: the Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, and the trial court level. I've always said this, and I do a lot of talking about the judicial races in general. The race for judge is probably the most important vote you will cast for a particular judge if you have a particular situation in front of that judge. If you think about that for a second, when you vote for a governor, you vote for president, you vote for mayor, city council person, they will impact certain things dealing with your day-to-day life: taxes, schooling, police brutality, all sorts of things. The judges that are elected will determine how long you suffer from an injury that you slipped and fell on someone's property. Is your case dismissed, or do you have someone to care for you for the rest of your life? Unfortunately, some of us have interactions with the law. That judge is going to determine whether you go to jail, whether you're found guilty or innocent or sent to a jury, how long your sentence is going to be if that comes up, unfortunately. Judges have an impact on your individual life that no other politician has. They have an impact on your individual life. When we talk about just this past week, I believe it was, we've had in this state, under Governor Whitmer, she's really cracked down on fighting the pandemic, and there's a lot of discomfort about that. People not wanting to wear, your masks, and not wanting to, socially distance, and it's really uncomfortable. But if you look at what the United States is doing compared to the rest of the world, we are leading, unfortunately, in some very bad trending lines. But the state of Michigan had early on cracked down and stopped the virus from spreading as quickly as it had been. Just last week, we had a 4-3 decision from the Michigan Supreme Court, which said that Governor Whitmer's actions were done under a law that itself was unconstitutional. It wasn't that she did anything against the law she was following was unconstitutional. A 4-3 split decision, meaning that, now we're under some other laws under the public health department, but were it not for that, the mask would have gone away. The socially distant orders would have gone away. The orders about schooling, the orders about unemployment, the orders about how your government legislative bodies work. Those are judges that are elected. Those are judges that have to go to you to ask for your vote. This is your time to determine who they are. And something as serious as a pandemic made its way to the Michigan Supreme Court. Police brutality. Imagine how often we've heard of the plight of African-American men and women who are walking while Black, golfing while Black, barbecuing while Black, selling waters while Black, sitting in your home eating ice cream while Black. Those issues, civil rights issues, equity and justice issues, are things which go before state judges, which go before people that you elect. So when it comes time to determining where our rights are going to be with respect to police brutality, you have the right to determine that, and by putting the right people in office. I'll just share with you a couple of there's two cases. Well, one case that I'll share with you about how important the judicial races can be. There was a case which went up to the Michigan Supreme Court maybe just a little over 20 years ago now. And it was about a woman who was in college. A man went into her dorm room, broke in, brutally raped her, then killed her. The family was distraught. They didn't know what happened. They didn't know who did it. There was no clue as to who was involved. So 17 years later, the person who did it ended up confessing, and they found out. So, of course, that individual paid criminal penalty for it. But the family also had a college student who was going to go on and live her life as a professional doing whatever. So they decided to launch a wrongful death lawsuit. And they went to court. They said, hey, we just found out who this individual was. And within 6 months of finding out, well, the family of the individual who was being sued, and it wasn't just the individual, but some others, argued that the statute of limitations had been blown, that there's 3 years that she had to sue after the wrongful death action within which her lawsuit could still be in existence. But after 3 years is gone, no more lawsuit. So, of course, the family argued before the Supreme Court, wait a minute, we didn't know who it was. We didn't know who to sue. We didn't know how to sue. And the judges on the bench in a split decision, again, decided it's too bad. The law says 3 years and it means 3 years. And unless you should have gone to the legislature to tell them to make it 3 years except for this situation. The law had been for decades. It's 3 years from when you learn or should have known, which is reasonable. If I didn't know who to sue, of course, I can't sue. But that lawsuit got kicked out. That woman's family had no ability to collect civil damages for the loss of their daughter. For the loss of their daughter. And I mean, case after case, another individual where a blind man walking down the street falls into a manhole. He wants to sue. The argument made was the manhole cover was removed and it was an open, obvious danger. And any reasonable person should have been walking down the street and noticing the manhole cover was removed, and you would have used reason to walk around the manhole. Well, of course, the person mentioned, I'm blind. I didn't see the manhole. The court says, it's not our fault you're blind. The law is a reasonable person, not a reasonable blind person. And they threw the case out. So imagine the impact that those judges, and these are Supreme Court cases, imagine the impact that those judges had on the blind man's family, on the woman's family who was raped and murdered. That's why I say the judicial races are the most important races to you as an individual than anything else you'll vote for. So you ask, well, what do we do? How do we know who to vote for? Well, if you look on your ballot, the first thing that you should do is you'll see races for your district court. If you're in Detroit, it's 36th District Court. It'll be a district court of whether it's the city of Southgate, the city of, Southfield, whatever. But it'll list your district court judges. Those are the judges that deal with, landlord-tenant matters, traffic disputes, the day-to-day stuff that you normally go to court to handle. If you look on that column, it will indicate. Now, first of all, for us to keep going there, all of you should go online to get a copy of your ballot. That is a must. If you do nothing else, you should have already, hopefully you get it in the mail. If you don't, you can go online, Michigan, www.michigan.gov/vote, get a copy of the ballot that you'll be voting on. Print it out. Look at it, study it, see who you're going to vote for. So for the judicial races, there'll be a column and it'll say vote for not more than 15, vote for not more than 10. Well, if you count those judges and they're 10 or they're 15 and it's the same number as they say you have to vote for, that means that everybody is basically going to win, is if everybody gets at least one vote. So not saying you shouldn't study those, but obviously those races are ones if you're prioritizing your time, you spend less time studying. The ones that you want to study are the ones like we have in Detroit, Wayne County. We have a race for race for Third Circuit judge, and I believe it in one column it says vote for not more than 15, and there are 15 of those. So again, you can review them, look at them, see if you know them. What I do is I don't vote for every one of the 15. I just vote for the ones I know. But also in Wayne County, there's a selection for vote for a non-incumbent race. So there's 4 individuals running and there's only 2 slots. And we actually happen to have some of those individuals here tonight to speak to you. But those are the ones that you want to pay close attention to. You want to study because there's actually a decision. There's going to be some of the group that'll lose and some that will win. So for those, how do you research them? Well, you can look at, just do a Google search. In today's age, internet searching is pretty easy. You can do it on your phone. You can do it, on your computer. If you don't have a computer, you can go to your local library. You can ask someone to pull it up. But there's Ballotopedia, there's Judgeopedia. There's all sorts of search engines that you can, if you literally just Google the name of the individual, it'll give you, you want to know the history, the career of the individual. Have they been practicing law for a long time? Where have they been practicing law? I personally like to look to see if individuals were practicing, I'm an employment lawyer, so I like to see if they were practicing employment law and on which side they were practicing. So if an employment lawyer is practicing employment law, was he or she representing the corporation or the government, or were they representing individuals who were being victimized and suing for rights? Were they representing unions? Were they representing the employer against the unions? So I like to look at those sorts of things, but look at the issues that pertain to what you're interested in and just look at their career. Look at who appointed them. So if they are appointed, if they have been appointed, you'll often be able to see which governor appointed them. And if it's a Republican governor, you know that individual has an affinity potentially to the Republican Party. If it's a Democratic governor, that individual has an affinity to the Democratic Party. So you want to look at those things, and you also look at what organizations they belong to. There's an organization, the Federalist Society, which is a very conservative think tank, which basically is in favor of free market, disfavors rights for individuals, favors corporations. There's Mackinoff Center, there's ALEC. There's all these organizations that individuals could belong to. You may want to see if they're part of, NARAL, pro-choice, Planned Parenthood. If they've donated, they're part of those organizations. Sierra Club, if you're interested in the environment, which we all should be. So you want to see what they're all about. And you just want to do your due diligence and your digging as to what they're about. And you want to, again, I would recommend you look at those races that are contested. Just going finally up the list, you've got your Court of Appeals. And in Michigan, we vote for Court of Appeals based on districts throughout the state. You want to do the same thing. If you see it, vote for not more than 4 and there's 4, you know that all of them are going to win with at least 1 vote. So again, prioritizing. And then Supreme Court, we know that this year we have 4 persons running for 2 seats. Now, in the race for the Supreme Court, it is a nonpartisan race, like all judicial races are nonpartisan, quote unquote. But what really happens is individuals running for the Supreme Court are nominated by the major political parties. So individuals, we have individuals, the 4 individuals running, Bridget McCormack, Elizabeth Welch, were nominated by the Democratic Party. Mary Kelly and Brock Swartle were nominated by the Republican Party. So those interests, they pertain to you. They certainly pertain to me. As a lifelong Democrat. I will want to know who's putting those persons up for election, and that will inform my decision about them. So one other final bit of information as far as voting in general, and Kimberly went through a lot of that. You are no longer entitled to vote, to register rather, by mail. What I'm recommending at this point, we've seen, and this was literally, it literally sickened me to see what's happening in the federal government as it pertains to your right to vote. There is a campaign, a robust campaign, more than I think we've seen at any time in my political memory, to frustrate the right of individuals to vote. We typically will see across the country where there'll be some shenanigans played. That's the reason we have the Voting Rights Act in the first place. Unfortunately, Section 5 of that was struck down some time ago, but basically it's to protect against shenanigans, because if obviously you can frustrate the right to vote, then those in power can continue to be reelected because they can pick and choose who votes for them. Um, it's the whole point of gerrymandering, which is a whole other discussion. But we've seen the threat, not just threat, but the actual changes made within the post office system to potentially curtail ballots arriving on time. In Michigan, there was a ruling initially that if as long as you postmarked your ballot by the voting day, they were going to give it a couple weeks to get to the destination. That's no longer the case. As of last Friday, I believe the Court of Appeals ruled that's another issue that's going to go up to the Supreme Court. If you postmark your ballot, you put it in the mail by election day, does your ballot count if it doesn't arrive by election day? Well, according to the Court of Appeals, not so much now, but we'll see what happens later. But again, my recommendation is at this juncture, it's October 22nd. The election is less than 2 weeks away. It's now 12 days away. I would not rely on the mail at this point. Hopefully, all of you can vote early. I would encourage it. What I do is I find satellite centers, which are clerk's offices where they've set up. I think there's 30 some across the city of Detroit alone, where you can literally go into that center. It's usually at a rec center or whatever. For instance, near my house, Northwest Activity Center. And you go in, there's poll workers there. You can get your real ballot. You can sit down, fill out your real ballot, turn it in, and you voted. That's the easiest, most confirmed, simplest way to handle voting at this point. Walk into the clerk's office and get it. And as far as registration, if you know people who haven't registered to vote, now it's not too late. As Kimberly just got through talking about, it used to be that you had to register to vote 30 days before the election. Well, thanks to Proposal 3, which passed with 67% of the vote, I believe, we now can register to vote even on election day. Now, you can't do that at your normal voting location. You have to do that at a clerk's office. But you can think of 10 people who have never voted before. You can take them tomorrow or this Saturday. In Detroit, voting centers have been open on Saturdays and Sundays for the entire month of October. You can think of 10 people who have not voted, who are 18 or older, and have them walk with you, take them with you to this clerk's office, register them, give them a ballot, they will vote, and they're done. It's that easy, that simple. There are drop boxes, of course, and if you elect to use a drop box, you can do that, where you get your ballot, you take it home, study it, and then you go to a drop box and fill that out. I haven't heard of any shenanigans played in Michigan with drop boxes. Certainly in California, the Republican Party has put up fake drop boxes and had people put their ballots there. Of course, in Democrat communities. But anyway, or you can simply mail it in. But again, like I said, I would not encourage that at this point. Couple last things. If you have any trouble voting, you can call. There's a number of telephone numbers for you to call. One is run by the ACLU, which is 866 Our Vote. That's 866 OURVOTE. You can also call the NAACP. I'm with the Legal Redress Committee, and we have lawyers that are, ready and willing to help folk with whether it's getting the ride to the polls, if they got problems. Am I registered? Where am I supposed to vote? And that number is 313-871-2087. That's 313-871-2087. And so all sorts of opportunities for you to make sure that you cast your ballot, but do so this week, do so today. If you want to wait in line and do it, that's fine, but we really encourage you to do so. So thank you. Appreciate you joining. I hope you enjoyed the forum today. We're going to have a great discussion with a number of judges.
Thank you so much, Richard. Excellent job, as always. And so I want to encourage everybody again to please share this event on social media, on Facebook. And we want to get as many people as possible to tune in, and you'll have the opportunity to also ask questions. So now is the time that we've been waiting for. I am so glad that our circuit court nominees could join us. And you will hear from Attorney Shakira Hawkins, Attorney Chandra Baker, and Judge Mary Beth Kelly. All of them are running for the Third Circuit Court nominee. All of them, are running for the Third Circuit Court. And so our first nominee will be Attorney Shakira Hawkins, and she is going to come on, as the other candidates will, and introduce themselves and kind of tell you why you should vote for them. Shakira.
Hello, thank you for that introduction. Let me adjust my camera. Okay, so my name is Shakira Lynn Hawkins. That's how my name will appear on the ballot. I'm a Detroit resident. My parents were a police officer and an auto worker. My dad worked for Chrysler as a tool and die maker. I went to the University of Michigan for my undergrad degree and the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law for my law degree. I started my career in corporate law at Chrysler Financial Corporation. I realized very early that corporate law was not my passion. And so I left there and began my legal career in earnest at Legal Aid in the civil division. I worked there for a while, and then my dream job was to run a domestic violence shelter, and that opportunity came up. So I did that briefly until the duties of motherhood became a bit much. So I had to leave there, and I returned to the practice of law probably about 10 years ago. And ever since that time, I've been a public defender working in Wayne County, accepting court-appointed cases, misdemeanors through felonies, all throughout Wayne County, and I greatly enjoy it. I enjoy helping people, especially those in marginalized communities. I enjoy protecting people's constitutional rights and fighting for them every single day. However, our justice system isn't fair. And the things that I've seen have compelled me to run and take on this responsibility. I feel that, largely most people don't have to come to court until there's something wrong, and people can go their entire lives and never step inside of a court. But when you do, or if you do, or if someone you know and love has to come before a court, you want fairness, you want justice. You don't want decisions to be made the minute you walk through the door simply because of your skin color or your socioeconomic status, or education or lack thereof. You want everyone should be treated fairly. And I don't know that that's what happens. One of my very first trials, I was told that, I told the jury, I said, the justice system just isn't fair. And the judge, was very upset with me, actually. And she said, well, Ms. Hawkins says the justice system isn't fair, but she's a part of it. And I am a part of it. And that's why I feel I have a duty and a responsibility to run and try to make it more fair and just for everyone. I'm running on a platform of reducing mass incarceration through cash bail reform, mentoring at-risk youth to halt the school to prison pipeline, and instituting restorative justice initiatives to reduce crime. And usually people that go through restorative justice programs, there's a lower recidivism rate, so they don't go out and reoffend. I'd also like to expand the mental health treatment court, the sobriety court, and the drug treatment court. I think a lot of people that come before the court simply need help. And if they don't receive that help, they're going to go to prison, they're going to come back out, and they're going to reoffend. And while they're in prison, they've lost jobs, they've lost family, they've lost homes, they've lost opportunities. However, if the court treats them, helps them when they come out, or if they even never go in and they just get the treatment that they need, then they can become productive citizens. And finally, I just want to end the disparate treatment that we see. Our courts need diversity, not just in terms of skin color, which is sorely needed, but also in terms of background, perspective, and experience. I'm the only person that's running that's a public defender. I've devoted my career to public service and social justice. I want to continue that on the bench, just like I've done in my career. My website is Hawkins for Judge 2020. I'd invite you to go on, look it up, find out about me, and I think you'll find that I am the best candidate for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shakira. Lynn Hawkins, we really appreciate your comments. The next candidate you will hear from will be attorney Chandra Baker.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening. First, I want to thank you all for allowing me to come before you in order to speak to the voters. I am grew up in Detroit, right on Lafayette between Shane and St. Albans. I have 2 children. I went to Cass Tech High School, and I attended University of Michigan undergrad, and I went to Wayne State Law School. I have been practicing for nearly 20 years. I am currently over the Wayne Arson Reduction Unit at the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. And what that unit handles is we handle crimes involving individuals who have been killed or injured in an arson. I also handle arson for profit crimes. And those are those crimes where individuals will purchase properties in our neighborhoods throughout Wayne County, especially in Detroit. Many of those individuals do not live in our neighborhoods, and then they purchase these businesses. They have them burned, or they pay other people to have them burned, which of course, you know, increases our insurance rates, lowers our tax values, and also leaves blight in our neighborhood. So those are the kind of cases that I have been handling since 2017. Prior to that, I have done everything from that you can name it, every type of felony, homicides, carjackings, and everything in between. Prior to going to the prosecutor's office, I worked at Miller, Canfield, Paddock and Stone as labor and employment discrimination attorney. That is not the route I wanted to take. When I left Wayne State Law School, I have to say that I am not the traditional student. I went back to law school at 36. So this is a testimony for anybody who thinks that God is calling them to do something else. Step out on it and step out on your faith, because doors will open for you. And that's what I did. I felt I was being called to leave the position and depend on God to do what I did. And in 3 years, I graduated with my law degree. And what I didn't take into account was where the money was going to come from after my loans ran out. So in the summer, I was given the opportunity as a first year to do an internship at Miller, Canfield, Paddock and Stone, which allowed me to be able to cover my living expenses at that time. So it was just a blessing. In 3 years, I did not miss anything, and I was able to graduate in 3 years. And so I went to Miller, Canfield, only planning to stay there 2 years. But as God would have it, I ended up being there 5 years. And then I moved to become the community servant that I wanted to be. Now, I would tell you that my issue and my focus is mental health. I did not realize as much until I took over the arson department, because previously, any cases that I had where mental health was an issue, I was able to divert those individuals into the mental health program or the drug treatment program or a diversion program, where if it's a money crime, that you can pay back the money and not go to jail or prison, something along those lines. However, when I took over the arson department, I found out quickly that about 75% of my defendants have mental health issues. And it's ironic, many people that have mental health issues start fires. But what the problem is that people don't understand is a lot of these facilities that do take individuals with mental health issues, they do not take people who've been charged with arson. They also don't take a lot of people who have been charged with assaultive crimes. And if you know anybody with a mental health issue, you know that many of the issues that they face is that sometimes they can be violent sometimes. Sometimes they may start fires. And so this is exactly where these individuals need to be. But it's a liability issue for a lot of these particular facilities. So what I want to do is try to expand the mental health program. And I know you might say, as a judge, how can you do that? Well, the chief judge, Judge Kinney, is the one that actually started the mental health program at Wayne County. So I would like to see that program extended. I have, during my campaigning, sat down with different judges to try to figure out what they were able to do on the bench that impacts the community. And one of the judges I sat down with was Elizabeth DeSanto. She is a judge in Wyandotte. She did not have a mental health facility, a mental health program at all when she took over that position. And she applied for a grant and received monies. And now she has a mental health program. So I'm looking to do something along those lines to see if we can get facilities that will take individuals, those individuals that cannot be out on the street just because of a public safety issue and because the fires that they started might have killed or injured someone. But they also don't need to be in jail or prison where, yes, they will get medicated, but they really won't, their issue won't be treated. And so that's the kind of facilities that I'm looking to be able to facilitate. I might be able to work with the task force or other individuals to do that. And so why should you vote for me? I've been practicing nearly 20 years in my in the same court that I'm running for, both criminal and civil. And also I have the temperament, and I plan to be a timely judge and respectful to the community. So those are the reasons. My website is bakerforblindjustice.com. I'm also on Facebook as well as Instagram, Chandra Baker for Judge. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Attorney Baker. We enjoyed your comments. Thank you for joining us this evening. And so now we will hear from Judge Mary Beth Kelly.
Good evening.
Judge Kelly, good evening.
Thank you, Kimberly, for hosting this event. It's wonderful to be with Perfecting Church. You guys have done so much over the years, and I'm very happy to be participating this evening. So like Shakira and Chandra, I'll start out by just saying I'm a lifelong Wayne County resident, one of 7 children. My father was a high school teacher, then a principal. I did my undergrad at U of M Dearborn, and then I was lucky enough to go to Notre Dame's law school, which was a wonderful experience for me. I did practice law for 11 years with the Dickinson Wright law firm in Detroit. And in 1999, I was appointed, along with Ulysses Boykin, who is, as many of you know, one of the 2 spots that is open. Ulysses must retire because of the law in Michigan that you can't run past, well, I won't say how old he is, but in any event. Ulysses and I were both appointed to the Wayne County Circuit Court in 1999. And I've served on that court from 1999 until 2010, including 3 terms as the chief judge of the Wayne County Circuit Court. And I remain today the only woman in history to have served as the chief judge of the Wayne County Circuit Court. I'm very, very devoted to issues of diversity. My platform is, I'm running on 3 pillars, if you will: my experience, my commitment to equal justice, and finally, my independence as a judge. So as I say, I was elected in 2010 to the Michigan Supreme Court, where I served for 5 years. I'm very, very proud of my record on the Supreme Court. I focused a lot on juvenile justice. I was nominated because I brought a sense of civility to that court that the court had not seen for some time. And while on the court, I was the liaison for treatment courts. So like Shakira and like Chandra, I'm very committed to our treatment courts in Michigan, certainly our mental health courts, which over the past several years have expanded to include now in Wayne County a juvenile mental health court, as well as our veterans court, which is very important and does great work, our adult drug court, which, like Chandra says, has been around for decades. But the expansion of these treatment courts is a huge, huge priority of mine. And it's something that I've worked on, not just while I was on the Supreme Court. Even after I left the Supreme Court, I was the chairperson of the Michigan Committee on Juvenile Justice. And one of our main objectives there was expansion of juvenile mental health courts. So I certainly share that concern of both of the other candidates as well, and the commitment to that. As I say, I think that, like Shakira said, there is disparity in our judicial system. There is an overrepresentation of minorities in our juvenile justice system, which, as we know, is the best indicator to the criminal justice system. There's an overrepresentation of minorities in our criminal justice system. And I've done a lot of work statewide on this issue. I'm very, very committed to equal justice. And as I've said in other meetings, if you will, with the candidates, I really think that the court has a great opportunity right now to harness the energy of the Black Lives Matters movement and say, what does that mean to us as a court? How can we improve our services to our minority citizens within the court? And I absolutely agree with Chandra that mental health courts have to be expanded. She touched on how it's usually done, a grant that an individual judge gets. That's how our juvenile mental health court came about in Wayne County. Judge Ed Joseph got a grant to get that going, if you will. So I'm very committed to that. My independence as a judge, I really point to my record. While I was on the Supreme Court, I was very independent. I'm very proud of a couple of decisions. Stand Up for Democracy. That was the decision as to whether or not the referendum that the people got enough signatures for would appear on the ballot, so that the emergency manager law would actually be subject to the people's will and not just the legislators' will. And it came before the Supreme Court on whether the font size of the writing was too small. I wrote the majority decision, and I was joined by Justices Kavanaugh, Justice Marilyn Kelly, and Judge Diane Hathaway to say that font size is just fine. And there was all kinds of legal mechanics, if you will, that I thought the other justices were trying to say to keep that off the ballot, essentially. But it was on the ballot. And that's, as I say, just as one example of my judicial independence. If you go to my website, which is marybethkelly4judge.com, you can see, you can read my Supreme Court decisions, which I think reflect well on my commitment to juvenile justice, my commitment to independence, and my experience. And so I think that, again, I share the commitments to improving, increasing our mental health courts, but our other treatment courts as well. Our veterans courts have done particularly well, and I'm very committed to that as well. So I do want to say I'm Mary Beth Kelly. I've been Mary Beth Kelly my entire professional career since April 23rd of 1988. And I'm not Mary Kelly, and I'm not running for the Supreme Court. So I think that there has been some confusion. I've been asked a couple of times, are you on the ballot twice? Are you running for two different positions? No, absolutely not. You can't do that. I served on the Supreme Court, but I found that my skill set is really working with families, working with individuals, working in the trial court setting. And I think a really good trial judge is one that can really create a sense of justice for the litigants, for the prosecutor, for the families, for the citizens, for the jurors, anyone who comes into a courtroom. As Shakira said right away, you can tell by the judge's temperament, by the judge's preparedness, by the judge showing up on time, and just giving respect. Finally, I just want to add an issue that I'm very committed to. I know the other candidates are as well, and that's access to justice. That is, we have so many litigants who can't afford a lawyer, a litigant who might want to get divorced, or whose spouse might want to get divorced. And that person just doesn't have enough money to pay for a lawyer. Our state and our federal government has been giving us more and more money for these access to justice programs. But it's very, very important that we as a court really direct our pro se litigants to those resources. So there are legal aid clinics. There's persons that will accept pro bono work. But as the court, we need to tie those two things together so that anyone who wants a lawyer and feels like they need a lawyer for a civil matter gets a lawyer. Now, obviously, in the criminal arena, if you will, it's a constitutional right to have a lawyer appointed to you. The kind of work that Shakira does, for example, defending persons who have been accused of crimes, is terribly important work. And I really applaud both Shakira and Chandra. They are very committed to public service, as I am. And so I think the voters are really lucky. I think the citizens are really lucky this time around. But again, I think it's important to look at experience, commitment to equal justice, and is this person independent? Will they look at both sides objectively and rule based on the law and the facts as presented to them? So I do ask for one of your two votes. I think that I am now a visiting judge. I'm still a judge. I'm a visiting judge in the Wayne County Circuit Court, and I have been for the last 2.5 years. Most of the work I do there is clearing up a backlog of cases in the domestic relations division, so divorce cases, child custody cases. And that's one of the most common ways. Again, Richard Mack's comments were really on mark, that it's the trial courts where you're going to have your experience with our judicial system. Even if it's just being a juror, or if it's coming to court on a matter, that's most likely where you're going to encounter the justice system. And I think that you'll find that I'm really, really respectful of all of the parties that are before me, of the litigants, of the citizens who serve on juries, of criminal defendants. And there's a palpable sense when you walk into a courtroom how one is going to walk away from that experience. And so I really pride myself on that. I do ask for one of your two votes. And again, I think if you look at my website, marybethkellyforjudge.com, you'll find those three pillars: experience, commitment to equal justice, and independence. And I think that those really are the criteria by which you should pick the two judges to serve on the Wayne County Circuit Court. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Kelly. You know, this is something else, listening to the candidates, making sure this is running right. But I enjoyed what you had to say. And I know, you know, we know each other from somewhere. We served on a board back in the day, but I am familiar with your work. And I do thank you for joining us this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Have a good evening. Thank you. All righty. Well, this is, we are just at 7 p.m. So we are ready to start. I know that our judges are on a timeline. So we are going to go ahead and bring both of our judicial nominees on right now. And so that will be Chief Justice McCormick and Attorney Elizabeth Welch. And the moderator for this discussion will be Attorney Richard Mack and Attorney Lucinda Jones, both of who are members of the Political Relations Department at Perfecting Church. Okay, Attorney Mack and Attorney.
I can't.
Oh, is that better?
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Okay. The world we live in now.
Things yet. Man, oh boy, I've done enough of them. You think I'd be an expert, but so I've made this whole long introduction in thanking you all for coming. I mentioned in my opening comments there are 4 candidates who are running for Supreme Court. 2 have agreed to appear tonight. I think that speaks well of the 2 of you, and we should definitely make note of that. I will. I think we are starting off. Attorney Jones, you want to start the first one?
Yes, I will.
All right.
Good evening, Judge McCormick and Attorney Welch. How are you? Great. So my first question would be that's going to be to Chief Justice McCormick. Describe your education, experience, and prior employment, and why you believe it qualifies you for the office you seek.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us tonight. Elizabeth and I do a lot of visits to lots of groups, and we are very excited to be here to talk about the importance of the Michigan Supreme Court. I went to law school in New York City. I went to NYU Law School, and after that practiced in New York City as a public defender. That was my first job out of law school, and I did that for 5 years. And then I started working in legal education. I taught for 2 years at the Yale Law School on a fellowship, and then I went to the University of Michigan Law School, Go Blue, where I was on the faculty for almost 15 years until I was elected to the court in 2012. I was first elected to the court in 2012 and started serving in 2013. And it's been an honor to serve, both because the court makes so many important decisions that affect all of our families and communities and our whole state, but also because the court has administrative oversight of all of the courts of the state, and a whole lot of people interact directly with their local trial courts, as we were hearing from in the previous session. And the kind of justice they receive there and the quality of it depends in large part on that administrative oversight role that the Supreme Court plays. And I've taken a leadership role in a number of what I believe to be pretty important justice issues in our courts. The Lieutenant Governor and I have chaired the Governor's Task Force on Jail and Pretrial Incarceration for the last 18 months that could make Michigan a national leader in front-end criminal justice reform, and the court's Justice for All Task Force is aimed at closing the civil justice gap. I think I could go on for a while, but I should probably break because I know you have more questions for me and for Elizabeth too.
Yeah, thank you so much. Attorney Kelly, do I need to repeat the question for you?
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
let me do that. Yeah. Please describe your education, experience, and prior employment. Why do you believe it qualifies you for the office you seek?
Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I am really privileged to join you today, and I really thank you for bringing attention to these important races, which a lot of people overlook, that nonpartisan section of the ballot, which really deeply impact people's lives. So thank you for doing this. First of all, I am as one of the newspaper publications put it, she is a Big Ten graduate, and neither one of those schools are in Michigan. So I went to Penn State undergrad, and I went to a little school down in Columbus, Ohio for law school, and had an amazing experience, and eventually joined a large law firm in Louisville, Kentucky, started my practice there doing labor employment law, and then eventually moved back home to Grand Rapids, where I'm from, joined a firm called Miller Johnson, one of the larger firms in Grand Rapids, did that for many years until I was inspired to start my own practice and work with small businesses and nonprofits and individuals on employment law matters. So that's most of my day job, and I've been privileged to do that. I have an incredible group of clients that I've helped for many, many years. But what that practice did is it gave me a lot of flexibility to also do a lot outside my day job, which included a lot of public school advocacy. I became very, very involved on a really statewide level in working on public school policy, finding myself in the Capitol on a regular basis, working on a bipartisan basis for really equitable outcomes for kids in schools all over our state. Did that. Also oversaw voter protection efforts and worked in the election law space in West Michigan as well, working actively and proactively with local clerks to make sure we protected everybody's right to vote and try to troubleshoot ahead of time before election day, but also all day election day. Those are long days. And then finally served a group called the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. I was on their board, eventually served as board president, and had the privilege of serving that group during a time when they made a shift and started looking more at environmental justice issues and really getting more aggressively into that particular space in a really important time in our state. So really feel all those skills, my day job, but all the other things that I have done across our state are all skills that will be helpful to the court system itself. We need people who are leaders on complex systems and really know how to tackle long-term hard problems with perseverance. And I've been doing that with public school issues and voting issues in particular. I also have this unique expertise I did not plan to have when I kicked off the campaign, is that I am a COVID expert. I do employment law, and employers have been deeply impacted by COVID, as have employees. And so that is something that is deeply an issue my clients are navigating every day, whether it's who needs to be off work and how do we navigate all that. And that's the reality we're in now, and I think we're going to have for a while, and a lot of those issues will be working their way through the court too. So.
Awesome information from both of you. Okay, thank you so much. Richard, I'm going to turn it to you.
All righty. And I should say to the viewing audience, we are encouraging persons to send in questions through Facebook on our page. Our Facebook page is Perfecting Church. I think we also have Twitter. So make sure that you send in a question, and hopefully we can get to it. I know we have a number of them that have been sent in already. So my question to you is, who do you admire? If it's for the both of you, who do you admire most of the current or past Michigan Supreme Court justices, and explain why? And why don't we start with Attorney Welch? You can start with you.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Chief Justice. So, I have to be. I'll answer the question more in depth than that. But I will say first, I'm going to just do a shout out to her. She was a big inspiration for me running. She has been a leader on some of the really important reforms that our system needs to tackle. And one of the challenging things about being a justice, or really a judge anywhere, most people don't know who they are. And it's a really, really bad, because it's a huge, important job. And you have these 7 justices making huge decisions about not just the daily decision-making functions that impact our lives, but what the court system looks like. And she has really taken that responsibility to a whole new level, really more than I think anybody in the past has, and really pushed the court out into the public eye. And so she deserves a lot of credit for that. I will also reflect that Michael Kavanaugh, who served with great distinction for a long, long time on the court, is also someone I deeply admire. His intellect was profound. He also found himself in the same space as someone else I deeply admire, Justice Ginsburg, who he was, the powerful dissent at a time where his viewpoint and his judicial philosophy was very, very much in the minority. And he still wrote robust opinions about why he disagreed or what he thought the law should be, and really provided a roadmap for people to look to in the future, as far as what his thoughts are. So I had deep admiration for him.
Excellent. Yeah. Justice McCormick?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Justice / Mayor / Bar President Archer is a mentor of mine. And he has served so many roles that people forget that one of them was on the Michigan Supreme Court. But I don't forget it, because I get to read opinions from when he was on the court. And he was a mentor to me when I ran for office in 2012. So he's on my list. Justice Levin, who served with Justice Archer and served for a long time, in fact, really was an important intellectual voice on the court and wrote separately in lots of cases. I've heard from people who served with him that could be frustrating, that it took him sometimes a very long time to get his opinions circulating, but I will tell you that his opinions to this day are very well worth reading in every area we work in. And I agree with Elizabeth about Justice Kavanaugh. I had the good fortune to actually overlap with him for 2 years, and that was a real privilege for me.
Excellent.
All right. So the next question. Of Michigan Supreme Court cases which have been issued within the last 20 years, indicate those which you feel have been the most significant to Michigan jurisprudence in a negative or positive light. Indicate what about these cases do you find noteworthy? Chief Justice McCormick.
Yeah. This is so you know that the judicial canons don't allow us to comment on the cases because the court speaks through its opinions and orders. But I think your question is really just asking about which ones are significant. You're not saying, how do you feel about them? So I think that's
Okay.
I think that's fair game. It's especially easy for me to focus on the last 8 years because those are decisions that I've been on the court for. So I think when the court held that the sentencing guidelines violated the Constitution, that was a very significant decision. Some of the decisions that I would cite might not be ones people read about. The newspaper doesn't always cover. In fact, it rarely covers most of the decisions the Michigan Supreme Court makes, even some that are incredibly significant. So let me give you one example. In 2000 and I think it was 13, it could have been 14, the court was asked to decide whether a particular judicially created doctrine that was used widely in child protection cases called the one-parent doctrine, whether it was constitutional. And the one-parent doctrine was a doctrine that allowed a court to take jurisdiction of your kids if your co-parent, whether you were married to that person, lived with that person or not, had been accused of abuse or neglect. So you had no allegations against you, but there were allegations against your co-parent, and this doctrine, the one-parent doctrine, allowed a court to take jurisdiction of your kids. And the court, in an opinion that I wrote the majority opinion, held that to be unconstitutional. And to me, that was an incredibly significant opinion because the number of families who end up interacting with the child welfare system is significant. And that changed all of that. I think it was significant in 2018 when the court was asked to not permit the Citizens Redistricting Commission ballot initiative to make it to the ballot, and the court held that it should make it to the ballot. That was obviously a significant decision. That's a good start, I guess. I can stop there.
Yes, thank you so much. Let me repeat that for you, Attorney Kelly. It's a pretty long question. Of Michigan Supreme Court cases which have been issued within the last 20 years, indicate those which you feel have been most significant to Michigan jurisprudence in a negative or positive light. Indicate what about these cases do you find noteworthy?
Sure, thank you. I'm going to answer first the super legal wonky answer, and then I'll go into a decision that I think we all understand well. And I'm a little more able, I'm not the one writing these decisions, so the Chief Justice is much more limited in what she can talk about on this. So the first one is a decision that it gets cited all the time in briefs all the time, and that's the issue of who has standing to sue in our state. So there was a decision called Lansing Schools Education Association, and that was a very important decision about it involved teachers and a teachers union, but that really isn't important to the outcome of the case. It's about who can enforce laws in our state and whether those who are sort of asserting a common good have the ability to file a lawsuit. And there had been prior decisions in the decade prior that had really limited who can file a lawsuit. And that particular opinion, written by Justice Kavanaugh, actually sort of expanded who, in fact, has access to the courts and can make a claim in court. It has big implications for potentially environmental lawsuits and other types of claims that people might be making under the law. So it's a very it can kind of be an academic opinion, but as far as like, can someone actually get access to the courts? It's a pretty big deal because a lot of people basically were told, yeah, but you don't have standing, you weren't really harmed, so you can't file a lawsuit. So it broadened who can file a lawsuit. So that's the first one. The other one I'm just going to cite, and because it is big, because of the jurisprudence and the way the opinion was written, is of course the decision that's just a couple of weeks old, and the certified question that went up to the Supreme Court that the Chief Justice actually wrote dissent on that opinion about the governor's powers in a pandemic and what are her powers. In that case, the majority, written by Justice Markman, who is the justice who's retiring this year, he found that the law she relied upon from 1945 was unconstitutional. So the majority found that the law was unconstitutional. So she had acted under that law. And they used the rationale of the court was this idea called the non-delegation doctrine. Basically, that the legislature isn't allowed to delegate their authority to the governor, which is what that law did back in 1945. And so the court, in the majority opinion, found that under this non-delegation doctrine, this sort of idea that the legislatures can't give away their authority, they struck the law down as unconstitutional. And so that could have, that particular opinion and that rationale has, certainly a big ripple effect through our jurisprudence potentially. And it is actually around the country. It's not unique to our state. We're seeing that particular rationale pop up in other opinions in other places too. So I think that's, certainly an important decision.
And thank you so much. A packed questions, and you guys have some packed answers. Thank you so much. All right, Richard.
All right. This goes a bit more to what you have done with respect to activism surrounding the judicial reform. So what reforms have you previously supported to improve the court system so that all parties can receive justice? So looking at what you've done in the past, then the second part to that, if elected, what reforms will you champion to improve the criminal system and civil courts? So what have you done in the past, and what do you think you will do if you're elected? And why don't we start with Attorney Elizabeth Welch?
Thank you so much. So I have a fairly robust history of working on a lot of issues. And so I already talked about some of them. As far as the courts themselves, I've been a long supporter and actively involved with our legal aid of West Michigan group. So really active on the access to justice side, helping people afford an attorney and getting access to the system. There was in West Michigan, we have something called the Legal Assistance Center, which is a pretty unique model that helps people when they walk in the courthouse figure out how to navigate the courthouse and gets them help to do that for people who don't have attorneys. And I had the good fortune that some of the founders of that, when I first moved back to Grand Rapids, were very involved with that. So worked really actively in that space. As far as the criminal justice system, I practiced. I was of counsel to a criminal defense practice, so was certainly on the front lines in the system and doing some pro bono work in that system. But I most of my time, quite honestly, I spent a lot of time working on voting rights and trying to get people elected who would lead on important issues in Lansing. And I have the privilege that David LeGrand, who is a state rep and has been a leader, along with Rep Yancey and others on those issues. So a lot of my time was spent recruiting people to city commissions, county commissions, and state government who would, in fact, lead on that, and worked really hard to help and support those people.
Excellent. Chief Justice McCormick, same question. What have you done to improve the court system? And if you're reelected, what will you do to improve access to criminal justice and civil courts?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's really an important one that I hope, I'm just so glad you asked it, because this is an important part of the role of the Supreme Court. The Constitution gives us administrative oversight of the courts of the state. And that means we have not only an opportunity, but an obligation to work hard to improve the way people experience those courts. I have co-chaired with the Lieutenant Governor, the Governor's Task Force on Jail and Pretrial Incarceration. And excuse me, we had the help of the Pew Charitable Trust to collect statewide data to try and understand why Michigan's county jail populations have tripled in the last 30 years, even though crime is at a 50-year low. We all had a hunch about some of it, but we didn't have any data. And with the help of the Pew Trust, we got that data. We went and heard from the public around the state and studied national best practices, and then came to 18 evidence-based and values-based recommendations that would make Michigan a national leader in jail and pretrial reform. 13 bills have already passed unanimously out of the House that reflect some of those recommendations, and 7 more have passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee to the Senate floor. And so the first thing I will do is continue to make sure that all of them make it all the way to the governor's desk, because we have a pretty unique opportunity to have Michigan lead the nation in front-end criminal justice reform. The civil justice system is at an important crossroads right now. The courts have experienced more change in the last 8 months than in the last 3 decades, and it's given us an opportunity to rebuild what we do from the ground up. And we were already about 14 months into a planning process about the civil justice system. Our Justice for All task force is a joint effort between the Supreme Court and Michigan Legal Help and the State Bar, aimed at those 8 out of 10 people in Michigan who have civil legal needs and can't afford lawyers. And it has an ambitious goal of 100% access within 3 years. And we're about 14 or 16 months into it. We are just about to make recommendations to the court for a permanent access to justice commission. And we have a lot of ideas for how we get there, but they will involve technology, regulatory reform, and partnering with the legislature to get some resources. But there's a lot of good we can do, and I would love to keep doing it.
Yes, wonderful.
Excellent, both of you.
Wonderful. Yes, I agree. Okay, next question is, have you been a member of the Federalist Society? What are your volunteer organizations you have been a member of or have donated money to? And Chief Justice McCormick.
I am not and have not been a member of the Federalist Society. I will say that this is my personal opinion, is it's once you are a judge, I'm also not a member of the American Constitutional Society. I think it's actually appropriate for judges not to be a member of either. But I was not a member of the Federalist Society before I was a judge either, just to be clear. What have I given money to? The State Bar Foundation, which funds legal aid. I am a State Bar Fellow. The American Bar Foundation, which also funds legal aid just on a national level. I am an American Bar Foundation Fellow. So it just means I give money every year to those. I sit on the board of an organization called Kids Kicking Cancer and on the Washtenaw County Families Against Narcotics. So I give I might give nominal amounts, but more than that, I try and help them find resources. So I give a lot more time than money. I've been a public servant for too long, but I can work hard for good organizations.
You can never be a public servant too long. We appreciate your service. We really do. I didn't cut you off, did I?
No. I'm
okay,
trying to.
Okay. All right. Same question. Have you ever been a member of the Federalist Society? What are volunteer organizations you have been a member of or have donated money to?
Sure. I love this question. So I have not been a member of the Federalist Society. And I agree with the Chief Justice entirely about sort of once you're elected, how that should be handled. I actually am a member of the American Constitution Society, so just a different organization. But not the Federalist Society. I have a really long history of involvement in the sort of nonprofit world in West Michigan. I'm just trying to think. So I talked about the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. I've done lots of donations to them. Long time involvement with the ACLU. There's a new organization in our town called the Center for Community Transformation. Actually, the NAACP is now housed there, and I've been really involved with supporting them. I am also a member of the NAACP and have been for many years. I have, just trying to think, there's a group called Home Repair Services, which helps low-income homeowners stay in their homes. I was a board president for them and remain an active supporter for them. Like the Chief Justice, very supportive of the Bar Foundation and legal aid. There's a pretty long list, but that's a start.
Awesome. Richard?
All right. So this is I'll read the question and as an example. It deals with sentencing disparity. As a Supreme Court judge, what will you do to curtail sentencing disparity between Black and white defendants to the extent you can? And then there's an example. A recent Harvard law school study research concluded that systemic racism is the only reason that Black people are imprisoned at rates higher than any other race. Not the type of crime. If you look at one Black, one white, they're about the same age, both charged with the same crime, say armed robbery. Both had one misdemeanor prior. Both did a no contest plea. Both had a sentence score of 138. The white defendant received 2 years. The Black defendant for the same situation received 26 years. Same court, same judge. Mm-hmm. So that's just one example of what I think has become systemic, has been systemic in our country for too long. So the question is, as a Supreme Court judge, what will you do to curtail sentencing disparities between Black and white defendants? And Attorney Welch, it starts with you.
Yes, thank you. And I think that what you just quoted gets to exactly what we need. We need data. And I think this is a spot where the court can really lead. So obviously we can't, as candidates or a sitting justice, talk about how we'd rule in a matter if there was a lawsuit about the disparity or things like that. But what we can talk about is the importance of the data. And we know, and I know the Chief Justice can talk more about this, but the pretrial incarceration, jail and pretrial incarceration report, task force report, gathered data, and that was fantastic. That's the only way they have the recommendations. But we need to keep doing that, and we also need to do it everywhere. And it's not easy. You cannot, so you're talking about just like one courthouse, one courtroom. Wouldn't it be fantastic if you or the media or anybody could really easily say, okay, somebody has a drunk driving in Traverse City, they have a drunk driving in Wayne County, and they have a drunk driving in Kent County. What does that look like as far as sentencing? Whether it's the same courtroom, different courtrooms, or across the state. Technology is there. We can do this. But what we have 83 counties that are on different platforms. And we have, frankly, funding gaps, right? So this has not been a high priority, but I believe it should be. We know in public education, the space I spent a lot of time in, Data became everything if you're going to make informed decisions. So this is data that I think should be easily accessible. Shouldn't be that hard to gather this information. It should be broken down by demographics. It should include age, gender, race, location, and be able to, so people can get a really easy snapshot. That is easier said than done, I realize, but it is something that I am passionate about and something that I would fight really hard for.
Excellent. Justice McCormick?
Yeah, Elizabeth nailed it. If we have excellent data, we should first of all, we should collect excellent data, and then we should be transparent about what the data is. In Washtenaw County recently, an informed group of citizens raised some money and hired their own statistician to do this kind of analysis about sentencing procedures among the judges in the circuit court. And they delivered that report both to the Supreme Court and to the Chief Judge of the Washtenaw County Circuit Court. And the judges of the Washtenaw County Circuit Court have taken significant steps as a result of it to address some concerning aspects of the data. In addition to addressing what they have seen in that particular report, I believe Washtenaw, it looks like they're going to become the first county to start collecting that criminal justice data across the board and making it transparent. So they really are about to be the state leader in what this could look like. And once that's available for everybody to talk about and witness, then we can make lots of progress. So I'm kind of excited about Washtenaw being willing to go first here.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. The next question is, what activities best demonstrate your commitment to civil rights, equality, and justice? Please provide specific examples, and we'll start with Chief Justice McCormick.
Yeah, it's a great question. I wonder what I should focus on. I spent a legal career representing people who couldn't afford lawyers. My first job was as a public defender in New York City. I represented thousands of people, poor people who couldn't afford lawyers who were accused of crimes. And all of my work at the law schools I taught at was clinical work. My students represented people who couldn't afford lawyers under my supervision. And I looked for areas, I founded a number of new clinics where I looked for areas where there were gaps in that people were in particular need because of injustice. So as one example, the last clinic I founded before I ran for office and had to leave my full-time job at the law school was the Michigan Innocence Clinic, which was the very first non-DNA innocence clinic in the country. And the reason why we decided to launch a non-DNA innocence clinic is because Michigan already had a DNA clinic at the Cooley Law School. They had a DNA clinic going. And we knew enough about the kinds of things that go wrong to produce wrongful convictions because of all the DNA exonerations. It's given us a tremendous database, which, by the way, is housed at the University of Michigan, that scholars have been able to study. And they've been able to figure out both the rate of wrongful conviction and the kinds of things that go wrong. And we know from the kinds of things that go wrong that they go wrong in cases where there's no biological evidence to test. Misidentification, bad lawyering, junk science. Those things happen in cases whether there's blood evidence or other biological evidence or not. So we thought, why not put these super smart law students to work on those harder cases where you're never going to have a silver bullet with a DNA result, but you have to actually go prove somebody's innocence. They're much harder to litigate and just as important. So I founded that clinic in 2008, and it has exonerated 23 people since we founded it. But it was one of a number of examples. The Pediatric Health Advocacy Clinic was a clinic that we founded that was aimed at people who had health problems that really were driven by legal problems. So parents who had kids who had asthma because they were in housing that was full of mold. And it didn't matter how much the doctor could treat the asthma, but it's not going to get better until you treat the mold. So we partnered with low-income health clinics to provide legal services to the families whose health problems were really tied to legal problems. So I've spent a career, I think, working on a lot of these issues. And I do think even when you're on the court, you can make significant improvements in all of those areas, especially with the administrative oversight work.
Great, wonderful. Attorney Welch, same question. What activities best demonstrate your commitment to civil rights, equality, and justice? Please provide specific examples.
Yeah, so probably the space where I have the most examples is my work on public education. I live, well, I'll just be blunt. I live a few miles from Betsy DeVos. So I found myself as just an active parent locally, trying to figure out what's going on with school funding because our little local school was impacted. And this was about 15 years ago. I ended my work largely at the state capitol on a regular basis, advocating across party lines for all of our kids. There was a moment, so it starts out local, but then you start realizing this is a bigger system issue, and how we fund schools and where you live by zip code affects, what your school looks like. All of the typical journey when anybody starts getting involved in work, and you learn more and more and more. My work, I had the privilege of partnering with parents across the state eventually. And so there were parents from Detroit and from Ann Arbor and from Lansing and Grand Rapids, and we would all come together and advocate for our schools. And there was an interesting moment in time where there were huge cuts. There was a $450 per child cut across the board, across the state, didn't matter what district you were, everybody got hit. And there was a group of us, we were able to grab that moment and get all these districts to unite, urban, suburban, rural, and really get people who hadn't paid a lot of attention what was going on in our urban districts to pay attention. Suddenly, they were in rooms with folks. They were finding out more what was going on. And the work then expanded. There was something called the Education Achievement Authority, the EAA. Detroit was under the EAA, and other districts. Yeah, so yes, I'm sure Richard knows. Yeah. So, and so I was part of a group that was fighting, which I'll be honest, it was mostly Black and brown children that were under the EAA. And we were able to get a whole bunch of people to look towards that and say, we don't think that's a good idea. Fast forward, it's gone now. That was a lot of hard work by a lot of people. And we had to come together and really explain to people why we thought it was wrong. And if it's not okay for our kids, it's not okay for kids that live in another city. And so we worked really hard on that. So that was one example. The second example was the school funding model. I eventually was invited to be part of something called the School Finance Research Collaborative. And that has been a group that studies the true cost to educate a child. I was privileged to be invited into the room. Oakland Schools, Dr. Wanda Cook Robertson sort of helped with some of the spearheading of this and pulling groups of folks together. That work happened. And now that work is informing, again, it's all about the data. The number is out. What does it truly cost to educate a child? And using that data to really fight for better funding for kids, frankly, in districts by what they need and not just equal funding. Because every district is different. Kids are not widgets. So what they're doing is saying some children arrive ready, they've had preschool. They don't need as many supports as maybe another child needs. Another district might have a lot of kids who English is a second language. They're going to, of course, need more support. So using a funding model that looks at that as opposed to treating everybody exactly the same. So those are two big areas that I spent a lot of time in. I also could go on and on about my voting rights work and working with coalitions across the west side of the state, but I'll stop there.
Wonderful, wonderful. And let me say this, Attorney Welch, I believe I referred to you as Kelly.
I knew what you meant.
I have Kelly on my paper and my eyes are going back and forth, and so please forgive me. But fine. I do know that you're Attorney Welch, okay?
Let's say it again. Well. We got to get that right. They're different.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Richard.
Welch, Bridget Mary McCormick.
You got it. Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of us. It's okay.
Wow, this has been great. Thank you. I see Kimberly Hill is our leader is popped into the screen. That usually means that we're at the end of our this part of the session anyway. I've been really impressed with the
Yes.
answers given.
Yes.
I want to thank you. I don't know that I knew all of what I knew about
I
peer
didn't.
review and your dedication to community
Yes.
and activism just
Yes.
really shines through. So thank you
Yes.
for all those answers. Now, but I know it's not. I know Kimberly Hill. We have some Facebook.
Yes, we are going to take questions from the audience. So thank you so much, Attorney Mack and Attorney Jones, and of course our Supreme Court nominees, Chief Justice McCormick and Attorney Elizabeth Welch, for doing a great job answering the questions. And so the two people that we are going to have who will moderate the short Q&A from the audience will be attorneys Rosemary Hackett and Ryan Williams. And we are going to just post questions from the Facebook. And so we have a lot of comments, and you guys can take it away from there. Go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for participating in our meet and greet, the candidates. And I do have one question from a YouTube audience member, and they would like to know if either one of you candidates have a website.
Yeah, we both do. Mine is www.bridgetmarymccormick.com.
Yep.
And
and mine's welchforjustice.com.
Thank you. Ryan?
Yes, we don't have any questions quite yet on Facebook, and I'm still probing.
Okay.
You have anything, Rosemary?
I am looking, but I think that was the one that really caught my eye. They had some questions about polling questions, but I think that would be more for Kimberly and Richard in terms of the actual voting issues that were coming up. They were just more concerned on, they're getting a lot of information on finding more information about these two candidates. They can take their time to review, and that's why they asked about the websites.
Great.
I think I have one here. What about, what do you feel, what is your opinion? Well, I guess you can't do an opinion on it. I guess I'll just put it out there anyway. In regards to having public service, public service agents who work for the police department making mandatory that they stay in the city that they represent.
Yeah, I think that is actually a legal question that could come to the court. So the judicial canons would prevent me from commenting on that. So that's. Right. I gotta play by the rules. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one that people do litigate about. So unfortunately, we're not allowed to answer the question.
Okay, I think I have another one here. Is there any upcoming decisions that will affect Planned Parenthood?
I think we have to assume that that women's health is an issue that could be litigated in state courts. I'm not aware of any that are on the docket for our November case call, but. I think you have to assume that every kind of issue goes to the Michigan Supreme Court. So there are none that are accepted. How about that?
Yeah. And what I can supplement and say, and again, we don't know what's going to happen, but we do know that the U.S. Supreme Court, there are a lot of issues that potentially could come back to the states more, depending on sort of what this court does with certain issues. And there are certainly women's health issues that we could see kicked back to the states more than in the past. In which case, who's sitting on the state Supreme Courts can matter a lot.
Okay.
We had a question earlier that if Roe versus Wade was overturned, how would that impact the state of Michigan?
I mean, that it becomes a state court issue, basically. We're back to the world. The world pre-Roe is the states decided, basically.
State legislatures can make decisions about all of those questions, and presumably state courts might be asked to decide questions around all of that. So
exactly.
Okay. Another question. What is your philosophy on recusal, especially in situations in which a lawyer, legislators, former associates, or law partners are to appear before you?
Yeah, I mean, we have a recusal rule, and it includes the appearance of impropriety. So it's not only because you can't be fair. If it would send the public the message that something is not fair, you should recuse. I will say, in a state like Michigan, we end up knowing most of the lawyers who appear before us. They're people who appear regularly. Some of them are friends. I will tell you, I have ruled for and against my friends. You can go find them, and they will give you examples of when I ruled in their favor and when I ruled against them. That's the job. Obviously, I always recuse in cases where, or I did for a while, and I still do, if any of my former clients have cases that are pending before the court, which in the Michigan Innocence Clinic, that sometimes still happens because those cases get litigated for a long time. And if it's a case that I worked on, of course I have to recuse. And any other, kind of case where my family or somebody close to me has an interest. I think it's really important that the public have confidence in the court's decisions. So that appearance of impropriety is an important part of the rule.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. I am now a sole practitioner. It's been a long time since I worked at one of the big law firms where that particular issue, so that won't be an issue for me because it's been so long. But the Chief Justice is right. The bar gets small pretty quickly, so you do know a lot of people. I don't think just a friendship alone, unless there's some other particular reason that you'd have to recuse. I mean, that would be every judge at every local level would have a problem, because we do hopefully get along with one another. Actually, that's you want that. But I do think that it should be a transparent process. And I do think it is one that in an ideal world, you're public about the recusal and the reason for the recusal. And I think it's really important for the integrity of the system that obviously that be honored.
Okay. I have a few more. You have anything, Miss Attorney Hackett, that you want to, any questions?
Well, I see that Kim is back on the screen. I didn't check any new questions off of YouTube. I don't know about Facebook.
Okay. Let me, I got a few more.
Okay.
Well, Ryan, we're going to ask one more question.
Okay. One more? Okay, I'll get this one in. Have you ever been disciplined? This is a general question. Have you ever been disciplined or admonished by the Michigan Judicial Tenure Commission as a judge, or the Grievance Commission as attorney? Yes or no? And if yes, please state the date and nature of the reason for the discipline or admonishment.
No, I've never been disciplined by the Judicial Tenure Commission or the Attorney Grievance Commission in this state or any other state.
Oh, great. Okay, that was a question there.
Also, no. I was nodding my head. I meant yes, the answer is no. Yeah, I have not. No, I've never had any grievances. I have not had any grievances filed or anything. So thank you.
Yeah, that was an interesting question.
All righty. Well, we want to thank our two moderators for this audience Q&A, attorneys Rosemary Hackett and attorney Ryan Williams. And again, we certainly want to thank our Supreme Court nominees, Chief Justice Bridget Mary McCormick and attorney Elizabeth Welch. Remember their names. Their names. And I want to remind everybody that on Monday, November 2nd at 6 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m., Pastor Winans is going to host pre-election day prayer. And we certainly want as many people as possible to join us because we have to pray for this election, the outcome of this election. And this will be shown on Facebook Live and YouTube. And so please join us, but also invite others. And we know that there is power in prayer. The Bible says that the effectual, fervent prayers of the righteous availeth much. And so if there's ever a time to pray, it is now. And so we want you to join us again on Monday, November 2nd, the day before Election Day at 6 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. And that will conclude our program this evening. I want to thank the awesome attorneys on our department, Attorney Richard Mack, Attorney Lucinda Jones, Attorney Gregory Hackett, and Attorney Ryan Williams, and the Political Relations Department. We hope that you found this information to be very useful. And now we want to encourage you to really think about what you heard on this call today, on this during this virtual meeting, as you prepare to watch the last presidential debate before Election Day. Happy voting. Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, I agree.